Well, local law enforcement is preparing for more protests in Louisville after arresting more than 100 people yesterday. So, like I said, we're going to continue this conversation. We want to bring in Tessa Duvall. She's a reporter for the Courier-Journal in Louisville and has been following the Breonna Taylor case and the protests very closely. So, Tessa, let us start, because we really didn't dig in much to what the Attorney General had to say. So let's talk with the Attorney General's conference yesterday, press conference. You were live tweeting many of his statements. Give us the biggest takeaways that you got from Attorney General Cameron yesterday.
One of the biggest things we learned yesterday is that the Attorney General felt that Officer Miles Cosgrove and Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly acted in self-defense, and therefore, because they returned fire after being fired upon, that homicide charges would not have been appropriate for them, is essentially what he said. There were several other things that he sought to address. One is the statement being made by Kenneth Walker, who is Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, being made by an attorney for him, saying that Sergeant Mattingly, who was the officer shot that night, was hit by friendly fire. But that is something that the Attorney General sought to debunk yesterday, saying that the type of round that officers' weapons fired is not the same type of round that struck Sergeant Mattingly. And so it seems that Kenneth Walker's weapon fired the type of round that hit Sergeant Mattingly. So that's also something that we learned yesterday. And also up until yesterday, we didn't have a clear indication as to which officers actually fired bullets that struck Breonna. You know, people have viewed these three as essentially a single entity, you know, the killers of Breonna Taylor. And we learned that it seems highly unlikely, that there's no evidence that suggests that Detective Brent Hankison, who was the officer fired, actually shot any rounds that hit Breonna. The FBI concluded that the fatal round likely came from Miles Cosgrove, but the Kentucky State Police analysis was not conclusive. And so there is some conflicting evidence about who may have fired the fatal shot. But we did learn that it seems unlikely Brent Hankison actually shot Breonna, even though he did fire 10 rounds into the apartment.
You know, Tessa, it strikes me that the Attorney General is essentially saying that if officers shoot a bystander during a justified use of force against someone, that is okay, or at least they're not in the wrong. But if they also fire into a building next door, which is unoccupied, then you got to hold them accountable. And, you know, I wish we could play the 911 call where you hear Breonna Taylor's boyfriend saying that he believes that someone was trying to enter his home, that he believed that there was some kind of a break-in or some kind of activity that was taking place, which is why he fired his weapon. Now, the governor is speaking out about that press conference yesterday from the Attorney General, urging him to release the facts from the state investigation. So what is the governor's background in law, and why is it important for the people in Kentucky to have access to that information?
Well, before Andy Beshear was governor of Kentucky, he was Attorney General of the state. So he has held the office that Daniel Cameron finds himself in right now. And he gave remarks yesterday and called on Daniel Cameron to release as much as he can without endangering the conviction of the wanton endangerment charges against Brent Hankison. He says that Kentuckians have a right to know and to see the evidence and the facts for themselves, that people have been demanding answers, and essentially a 1-hour press conference is not going to satisfy that demand for answers that has gone on for more than 6 months now.
All right, so now City Council is also involved. They held a no confidence vote for Mayor Greg Fischer, who's being investigated for his role in this case. Has the mayor committed to taking any action following the grand jury announcement?
You know, we are still, seeing the full extent of what policy changes are going to play out in Louisville with the historic $12 million settlement with Breonna Taylor's family last week in the civil lawsuit that secured a number of police reforms. And the mayor has committed to, continuing this conversation to continue listening to people. You know, the city is searching for a new permanent police chief right now. We currently have an interim chief after the previous chief was fired, and we'll have a new interim chief come October 1st. So there's a lot of transition in the police department right now. And, you know, there's a lot that, while this grand jury decision has come out, the protests aren't over. You know, people in the community aren't done demanding answers and change. So I don't think that this conversation slows down at this point.
Well, Tessa, thank you so much for your reporting. I just want to let our viewers know that the Courier-Journal has done excellent reporting throughout the entirety of this story. And you specifically have also done some incredible reporting. People should follow you on Twitter because, as Anne-Marie pointed out, you were live tweeting what was happening yesterday. And, you know, local journalism matters, and what you and your newspaper are doing is certainly providing a lot of information to people who may not know it, even people who are not in Kentucky. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.